They say that every picture tells a story, and the same can be said for digital transformations. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that ERP implementations and digital transformations and the concepts behind them are very complex. It can get overwhelming to think about all the different things you have to think about. So one thing I've tested out recently on social media is try to create pictures and images that represent the things that I think are most important to digital transformation success. And what I also find is that when I see a visual of something, because I'm a visual person, it tends to resonate more and I tend to understand the concepts better than someone standing in front of a camera on YouTube talking about those concepts. So instead, what I want to do today is show you some pictures and explain why I think these pictures best represent ERP implementations and digital transformations. And those visuals can be a great way to remember what we should be focused on during our initiatives. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology-agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. The first thing that's worth looking at is this picture right here. This is a picture of a very poorly designed and a very poorly built house. And the reason I like this visual to discuss ERP implementations and digital transformations is because I think that most project teams and organizations treat their digital transformation initiatives like this house right here. And if you think about how this house would have been built in the way that you see here, which is highly unusual, by the way, you don't see many houses like this, at least I hope you don't. One of the things you notice here is that not a whole lot of thought or organization went into this project. And just as you would not build a house without a clear architecture, without a clear general contractor in charge of the project, without good contractors working for you to support the project, without all of those things, your house is going to turn into a disaster. If you don't take the time up front to properly plan for your ERP implementation or digital transformation, those initiatives are going to end up looking a lot like this house. Another metaphor or analogy we can use here is if you think about how most organizations approach their digital transformations, they get all excited about the technology they want to deploy. They contact and hire that software vendor or the system integrator to come in and deploy that technology, and they have them come in and just start building stuff. And a way to think about this in this analogy or metaphor is the idea of if you built a house, you wouldn't just reach out to a plumber to get started on building a house. You would do a lot of things before you contact the plumber. You would hire an architect. You would have someone design the blueprint. You would approve the blueprint. Then you would start bringing on the contractors to build whatever it was you agreed to and signed off on in the blueprint. But organizations typically don't do that. They jump straight to the plumber. They have the plumber come in and start building stuff, and you end up with this right here. So this is why it's so important, and hopefully this picture helps you remember that it's so important to have a solid plan and a solid focus on the phase 0 implementation planning. And the more time you take up front to a point, you're going to save a lot more time and money during the implementation of your technology because you're going to have a clear vision of what it is you're trying to accomplish. You have better alignment, you have better organization, and you'll just be able to accomplish a lot more in less time with less money if you take the time up front to create that blueprint early on. Another unfortunate phenomena in the ERP implementation, digital transformation space, especially as it relates to consultants, is oftentimes these big consulting firms, the system integrators, the software vendors, bring on a team of inexperienced consultants to help define how your business is going to run in the future. And that's why this picture right here is so representative of what so many consulting firms do, especially the big consulting firms. Not to pick on any one set of players in the space, but these larger implementation firms, these larger system integrators, the larger consulting firms are notorious for hiring a bunch of really junior people without a corresponding number of senior people that know what they're doing. So you end up getting sold by some really senior people who do know what they're talking about, but when it comes time to execute for your project, you end up with this. You end up with a school bus of consultants that are learning on the job and you're paying for them to learn. So you really want to make sure that you keep control of your system integrator and your outside consultants, and that you keep that flexibility and ability to approve and have transparency into what different consultants are doing. So rather than just taking at face value and trusting that your consulting partner is going to know what they're doing and bring the right resources, you want to validate that. It's that sort of trust but verify mentality you want to have with your outside consultants. So rather than having this school bus of consultants, you also want to make sure you offset some of those less experienced consultants with people that do know what they're doing. Make sure that you have the right team and the right skill set overall for your entire consulting team. This picture right here tells a story that's happening in the cloud ERP space right now. And that story is that much of the cloud ERP software industry is still developing, it's still maturing, and it's still relatively immature compared to its on-premise counterparts. Not to say that cloud is more inferior to on-premise, because that is where the industry is going. But with the exception of some of the native cloud solutions like NetSuite, Salesforce, and Workday, for example, that started off in the cloud, most on-premise incumbent vendors are just now still making that transition over to the cloud. In other words, they had 20, 30 plus years of investments in R&D in their on-premise solutions. Now they're trying to move all that capability over to their rewrites for the cloud. And that just simply doesn't happen overnight, and that's very understandable. So what's important to recognize is that this is sort of like a giant puzzle that we're still putting together, even though you may be being sold something that's very mature, highly capable, highly functional, and something that could deliver tremendous business value. The reality of many cloud ERP systems in the marketplace is that they're still developing. There's still a lot that's not ready for prime time. There's a lot of advanced functionality that you might take for granted because you're so used to seeing it in some of the on-premise counterparts, but you don't have that yet in cloud solutions. So it's just important to know that when you go through a cloud ERP implementation, you just want to make sure you poke holes in it and understand what the maturity level is for the functionality today, not necessarily what's on the roadmap for the future. This picture right here represents a canary in a coal mine. And for those that don't know the story, back in the olden days of coal miners in coal mines, they would have canaries to ensure that they knew when there's a gas leak. And the reason that the canaries helped them understand that there was a gas leak is because they would hear the canary singing until they didn't. And when the canary stopped singing, they would know that there's a gas leak, even though the humans, the coal miners, weren't able to smell it. And the reason that this is such a powerful image, in my opinion, for digital transformations is because most organizations don't smell the gas leak. They don't sense that stuff is wrong until it's too late. And so what organizations need to think about is, how do we get that canary in our coal mine, knowing that digital transformation failures do not happen overnight. It's not just one massive explosion or one massive thing that goes wrong. Typically, it's stuff that culminates and percolates under the surface for weeks, months, if not years, until the pain is felt. And so we've got to figure out, how do we mitigate risk and how do we create that canary in a coal mine mentality of risk mitigation? How can we proactively identify and mitigate risk along the way? And that's where third-party independent advisors like Third Stage Consulting can help. So as you go through your digital transformation, it's important to think about risk mitigation and what is your canary in a coal mine. The last picture I'll discuss here today is this picture right here, which suggests that change management is very personal. Oftentimes we get sucked into thinking that our team is fully on board with the changes we're going through, and they are going to be fully supportive of this project, and change management is going to be the least of our worries. And this is a really common oversight and a very common flawed assumption. And the reason for that is because on the surface, most people want to help the organization. They are, believe it or not, wanting to help the organization. They want to see the organization succeed. But when you start to peel back the layers of the onion and you start to identify how those people's jobs are going to be affected, they start to feel threatened. So they might still be on board with the changes that are coming down the pike, but then they start to feel the threat and the uncertainty behind how their jobs are going to be affected. They still support the changes, but they start to get nervous as it relates to themselves. So they start pushing back and resisting and feeling threatened by the changes that are affecting them. And if you think about it, if every single person in your organization has that same feeling, they want everyone else to change, but they're nervous about their own change, that's going to add up to a bunch of resistance to change. So we have to recognize that change is a personal thing, and people do take it personally. Even though they try as hard as they can to support the business and see the bigger picture, think longer term, at the end of the day, we're all focused on self-preservation. We want to be valuable to the organization. We want to preserve our jobs. And if we feel like any of that is threatened, we are going to push back in some way, even if it's subtle and not in a nefarious way. So recognize that change is personal and make sure you have a change management plan to overcome that. And that's the one thing you can do to address this picture right here. So I hope these pictures help paint a picture of what it takes to be successful in your implementation. And I hope these 5 pictures help you maybe learn a little bit more and retain a little bit more around what it takes to be successful. If you'd like to learn more and go deeper into some of these concepts, I encourage you to download our free ebook called Lessons from 1,000 ERP Implementations. And in this book, I cover 20 different things, 20 different lessons that I've learned from having helped over 1,000 companies through their ERP implementations over the years. You can download that by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below and you can download that for free. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. So you end up signing up with or selling into, signing up, selling into, I don't know what I'm talking about. And what those, no, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay. I felt like I had to say something else, but there was nothing else.